Went to my GP, and because of my age, a suggestion was made that I should have a PSA test. I did that, and from there it went on. My PSA levels were very irrational. They were down, then up, went up to 6, went up to 7. So consulted my GP about that, and the GP said, well, the best thing to do would be go and see a specialist about it to gain some more information as to why that may be happening. So I did that. I came and saw Professor Rashid, who sat me down and said, it shouldn't be like that, it should be fairly close. So we'll just, at this stage, just wait and see, and came back for another appointment. At that time the PSA had gone up, so we then did our first biopsy, and that biopsy we took around about 12 samples at the time, and they were all benign at that point. PSA was still going up and down, so we came back for another biopsy, and when I went in after receiving those results, it was a positive result, and we further discussed what we should do from there. When I was diagnosed with prostate cancer, I had two things. One, relief that we'd finally found that there was something there, and secondly, what happens now and what do I do now, and what decisions do I need to make. Yeah, Prem suggested I should have a second opinion, so I went to a radiologist. I gained all information from the radiologist. I then read Prem's book about various aspects of surgery, etc. I then came back to Prem and sat down with Prem, and we decided to forge ahead with the operation. Prior to the operation, I spoke with my wife, and we sat down and went through all the pluses and the minuses. I also spoke to my young family who live in Sydney and gave them the pluses and minuses. At the end of the day, the decision was made that I proceed with the operation. When I sat down with my wife, we discussed things about incontinence and ongoing problems that may occur. The bottom line really is that I had cancer. It could spread from where it was, which would have meant that I would only have a short time to go. So regardless of whether incontinence or any other problem would occur, I thought it would be great to be able to have the extra lifespan so I could spend it with the family. It's been 12 months since I had the operation. My PSA level's back down to 0.01, and the incontinence is not there at all, and sexual relations are still possible, so all those things I worried about before are no longer a worry at this point in time, 12 months down the track. When making the decision about the operation, I was fortunate enough to have my next door neighbour who had an operation by Professor Rashid, and he gave me some great information about what had been through and how the aftercare was done. I also spoke to my GP who also recommended seeing Professor Rashid. But I also spoke to a couple of friends, one in Sydney who had the operation through a specialist down there, and he was very, very mindful that it was a great operation. Also had another friend, an army friend in Melbourne who had pellets inserted, and he also spoke very highly of his specialist. But having gone through both those avenues, I sat down and said to my wife, we have a very, very good team up here, not only obviously urologists, but anaesthetists, etc. So why not have it here, because everything's here, it's very local, very based, and there's no travelling involved, which can and would probably put an extra strain on moving forward. Before the operation, I was told I would have a catheter and I would have that in for at least 18 days. At that point I balked a little bit, but having had the surgery and having the catheter in at home, it was more of a relief because everything was still under control at that point in time. I then came in here to have the catheter removed. Prior to having it removed, I spoke to the nurses. They told me what might happen after. I was very prepared for that. I had the catheter out here. It was very professionally done, and I had phone calls the day after and the day after that just to make sure that everything was still operational, and it was perfect. So all those worries were not required at the end of the day. I was probably wearing pads for the first 6 weeks. Thereafter it stopped altogether. From time to time I could feel that if I'd had too much to eat or whatever, there was pressing on to do something, so I made sure that I was able to be somewhere where I could go. But 6 months after, I had no problems at all in that regard. 12 months out, my erectile function is great, and I'm very happy with where I am.